Someone had asked me if I'm a transhumanist or I think an ecological traditionalist or a traditionalist, something like that. Um, I'm a conservationist. I believe in conservation, and I'm going to get into that too because ecological traditionalism and this Gaia nonsense and Earth Mother nonsense and Wicca nonsense, it doesn't sync with scientific conservation. Okay, conservation is scientifically minded. Environmentalism is a religion, as far as I'm concerned. I went to school for wildlife and forestry management. That's one of the things I went to school for. I'm a big believer in preserving the environment, but I'll get into that in a bit. So, I guess you could say, ideologically speaking, politically, religiously, etc., it's one thing for me. I would consider myself to be a naturalistic or scientific pantheist. I believe God is reality. Reality is God. Reality is the natural world. We can understand God through a combination of the scientific method and through the humanities. Currently, we cannot perfectly understand God because we have our imperfect primate minds. Interestingly enough, I think that there is a lot to be said at getting in touch with our primate selves, as opposed to this wishful thinking and hocus pocus, ritual magic nonsense and mysticism and all this crap, even shamanism. These are all illusions as far as I'm concerned. I think that there's a lot to be said for understanding our primate selves on a primate level. I agree with looking into that's one of the reasons I look into how do primates eat, how do primates live, and I try to extrapolate that on how would I live as a primate in human civilization, as a highly evolved primate. I think that it takes a lot of stress out of life to try and understand the primal aspects of our brains and our bodies and how that interacts with reality. So that's one aspect. Am I a transhumanist? That depends on what we mean by the word transhumanist. Transhumanist has been perverted and made to mean a lot of things by a lot of different people. Okay? A lot of people have tried to merge, like Zoltan Istvan or Istvan. I was, for a while in the 2016 election, I did not vote for Trump in the primary, the Republican primary in 2016, and the reason why was because I was registered with the Transhumanist Party. I'm a big believer in life extension and immortalism. I believe in achieving physical immortality, and I'll get more into that in a second because people go, well, that's impossible, the universe is a closed system, yada, yada, yada. I'll get into that in a bit. But unfortunately, people like Zoltan Istvan have merged transhumanism with things like transgenderism, which is not transhumanism. The nuts and bolts of transhumanism is to use technology to overcome human frailty. And I would say, in that respect, in the sense that I believe that humanity should use technology, biotechnology, cybernetics, mind uploading, prosthetics, etc., to achieve physical immortality, as well as to, or not even just physical immortality, perhaps immortality in a cyberspace type environment or things like that. I think that if that's what you mean by transhumanism, yes, indeed, I'm a transhumanist. If you mean, do I believe in transgenderism and yada yada and all this stuff? No, it's not that I'm necessarily against transgenderism. I personally am against transgenderism, but I think that transgenderism falls under body modification, like it's an extreme form of body modification, like tattoos and piercings and things like that. I don't have any tattoos or piercings either. I'm not in favor of tattoos and piercings either, but I don't judge people that get tattoos and piercings. It's just not for me. Just like having myself made to appear as though I'm a member of the opposite gender is not for me either. I'm pro genetic engineering. I'm pro GMO. I'm pro desalination. I'm pro terraforming. I'm pro space colonization. I'm pro undersea colonization. I'm pro human self-directed evolution. I do believe there are universal truths in religions that can be objectively observed. I think that many things can be objectively observed as true. A lot of the things that we call sins are sins because they take us away from the light of God. And what is the light of God? The light of God is vibrant health. And a lot of the things that are sinful, whether they're sins of whether they're sins that cause a mental or emotional disturbance, or a disturbance of the physical health, which would also cause a mental health disturbance. I think sins are sins because they take us away from the light of God, and the light of God is vibrant health. I would say that I am a techno-nationalist. A lot of people like to talk about technocratic people, or technocracy. I believe that as much as can be fully automated should be fully automated. I believe that this would preserve the environment. I believe that would be a side effect of it, and I do believe in preserving the environment. However, as a trained conservationist, I understand that in order to preserve the natural world, it requires human intervention to preserve the natural world. And people might go, what do you mean? It's common sense if anybody took earth science, and this is one of the reasons I don't believe in global warming like most people do. It has to do with the oblong axis of the earth around the sun, and how so many hundreds of years or so we get closer and further away. I'm not a big believer in especially anthropogenic global warming, because I passed earth science, and I also accept the reality of the carbon cycle, which, if you believe in global warming the way that people do, it would require not believing in the carbon cycle, or ascribing things to the carbon cycle that aren't there. And I believe in objective reality, the way objective reality presents itself, not the way I want to believe it. And environmentalism is a religion, it's not science. So, getting back to conservation, I'll just use wetlands for an example. If you do not dredge a creek, for example, eventually the creek will fill with silt, and it will eventually become a wetland, and it'll eventually dry out, and it'll eventually, that's just what happens. If you want to keep that creek a creek, you have to dredge it. You have to rebuild the banks of the creek. You have to revegetate the banks of the creek to keep the banks of the creek where the banks are. And you need to keep doing this, or it will eventually erode, flatten out, and become just a wetland. And people might go, well, what's wrong with that? Well, nature left to its own design, it will succumb to entropy, just as the human body left to itself will succumb to entropy. I believe bodybuilding is the ultimate. Bodybuilding and health maintenance through fitness is an excellent example of transhumanism. I believe that it is the desire to fight entropy, the desire to fight the entropy that causes the degradation of the human organism. So in that sense, yes, I'm a transhumanist. I'm not an ecological traditionalist of any sort. I do believe in the sanctity of the natural environment, in as much as the natural environment is an expression of God as the universal force that, you know, the universal life force. God is reality, but even more so, God is that which makes the inanimate animate. Okay? I think a lot of my views stem from my early explorations into things like Thelema and Hermetic magic and Thelemic magic, as well as alchemy and early natural philosophy. People wonder why I don't lambast Christianity or the Christian allegory. I believe the Christian allegory is an important allegory. I believe the Christian allegory is used time and time and time and time and time and time again in things like alchemy. It is the transubstantiation of the uh, the the finite matter of man into the infinite matter of God. So it is the transmutation of man into God, of woman into goddess. That is what the Christian allegory really is. Especially as seen in the mystical side of Christianity. There is an excellent interview with a guy named, Bill Moyer did the interview. The Power of Myth. It's a book I owned many years ago. PBS did an excellent series of interviews. Maybe it is Bill Moyer that's the guy that did I think that might be the interviewer. But it's an excellent book. He talks about the Grail myth and all that. But more important than the power of myth is the power of reality. Okay? Reality is far more powerful than myth. And this is why I ascribe to things such as transhumanism. I guess if you were to nail me to a wall, the thing that would be most similar to what I believe would be a hybrid of Dr. William Luther Pierce's cosmotheism, Ben Clausen's creativity, and Jose Vasconcelos's concepts of a cosmic race, combined with Ray Kurzweil's concepts of a singularity. And I think that would most accurately describe what I personally believe. If you were trying to nail me down to what do I really believe, it would be a hybrid of William Pierce's cosmotheism or Baruch Spinoza's concepts, which are essentially the same thing. Baruch Spinoza and William Pierce had essentially the same ideas. And Ben Clausen's concepts of creativity, and Jose Vasconcelos's concepts of a cosmic race. I'm a firm believer in reality the way reality is. That's why I did that video on crossbreeding, the advantages of crossbreeding versus the disadvantages of inbreeding. The concepts of a pure race are extremely flawed when it comes to viability of the human organism. Crossbreeding is, of course, superior to inbreeding. Racial purity would degrade the human species, not lift up the human species. And that's a very important factor to consider in mate selection and in how we want to see our species look in 100 or 200 or 300 years. And a lot of people will say, well, we want our descendants to look like us. Our descendants, we do not look like our ancestors. We might look like some of our ancestors that we recognize. And I do plan on doing Alexei Fedorov, who is a scientist that was actually friends with me on Facebook for quite a while. He's also into gerontology, life extension, transhumanism, etc. He has a company that does genetic testing, and I'm not real friends with him, but I was Facebook friends with him for years. And I plan on doing his genetic test, and I plan on reading the results online. I hope to find out that I'm part black, part Jewish, and part Native American, and the reason why is I gots to gets mines. And I will really enjoy that. I'll boogie down. I'll have a bar mitzvah or bar mitzvah. I'm not quite sure which is which. I think one's for a chick, one's for a dude. I'm already circumcised, so I don't have to do that. That's convenient, huh? Thank you, John Harvey Kellogg. And essentially, people don't understand, why am I so... I'm a disbeliever in racial purity, because racial purity is not necessarily a positive thing. You should be looking, if you're being honest about breeding for superiority, you need to look toward crossbreeding and judging things by the individual and desired traits, to isolate these desired traits while promoting enough genetic diversity that you avoid increasing the problems of inbreeding. And the best way to do this is by crossbreeding different groups of the human species. And this is where the concepts of La Raza Cosmica come in, the concepts of a pan-American race. I was made aware of the book La Raza Cosmica, or The Cosmic Race, by my friend Eliana, who essentially is not my friend anymore. Poor girl fell into her own, I think she fell into her own nonsense and thinks herself a Spaniard when she's Native American, Italian, French, and Spanish. She's about as Spanish as I am English. I might actually be a little more English, but the fact of the matter is, neither she nor I are one or the other. I'm not English and she's not Spanish. There is a more, an American is not a European. She and I are both Americans. She an Argentinian. I am an American from the United States. I'm an Anglo-American, Latin American. So the cosmic race, the concept of the cosmic race, is to blend the Latin Americans with, and the Latin Americans are a blended race in and of themselves, with the Anglo-Americans, who are also a blended race in and of themselves. For example, my ex-girlfriend is technically what would be considered a castiza by Spanish standards, or metis by French standards. And what that means is that my ex-girlfriend is like basically white, but has a drop of Cherokee blood in her. I think she's like 1/8 Cherokee or something. And that would make her a castiza by Spanish standards, or a Europid, or whatever the heck that is. And I joke because my mom's family were Italians from Brazil. I've frequently joked that I will find out that I'm black, Native American, and Mediterranean. I already know I'm Mediterranean, but the joke is, because a lot of my mom's family, my Uncle Ronnie looks like my Uncle Pablo. So or my Uncle Salvador. Oh wait, Salvador is actually Italian. I'm trying to think of a Hispanic name here. I don't know, something Hispanic. And my point is that I think it's fairly obvious to me that my mother's family were probably a little bit more than Italian. So it doesn't bother me that I may be part black, or I may be part Native American. There was never any family rumors of that, but I think the reason why was at the time that my mother's family came here from Brazil, we were only receiving whites. So I think there may have been some fibbing that took place because they were wealthy and they wanted to get the hell out of Brazil because Brazil was turning into, well, Brazil, kind of like the United States is now. So they wanted to hurry up and get the hell out because they had the monies, and they didn't want to lose the monies to savage mongrels that were roaming the countryside where their coffee plantation was. So that's the gist of that. Now, if I find out that I'm part black and part Native American, or even part, God forbid, Jewish, is that going to, and no, there are no family rumors that I'm part Jewish or part Native American or part Hispanic. Well, there's none of these rumors in my family. I'm letting that known. But it's a possibility, and I'm going to go ahead and get this test probably in a couple months, and I will read the results online. I should get the results of the test in, I believe, 8 weeks it is. And luckily, I'm really doing it for the health things. I want to find out where I stand health-wise, so I can adjust my my diet and exercise programs and things like that to help prevent the illnesses that I might be genetically predisposed to. And I can also use it for selecting a mate. But the thing is, it's just quite humorous to me that these people, now I'm a big believer in labels myself, but it gets to a point where labels become restricting. As Anton LaVey said, labels are very important because without labels, people wouldn't know what's what. And all these people that are against labels, it doesn't make very much sense to be against labels because it's very confusing not to have labels. But what's funny is, am I against labels? In a sense, yes. I don't consider myself a transhumanist per se. I am technically. Where do I fit in? I consider myself to be a third positionist. I consider myself to be a realist, honestly. I'm a realist. There's actually a religion of realism, which is also got its own stupid hang-ups that are against objectivity because it's anti-natural. It supports homosexuality. It supports things that are anti-natural. And I think that's humorous. I believe being against homosexuality is one of the universal truths against religion. I don't believe in bashing homosexuals. I believe they are punished by God. They are punished with an increased risk of prostate cancer and STDs and things of that nature. They are taken a little bit away from the light of God through their sinful behaviors. Just like those that smoke cigarettes are taken away from the light of God. I'm a former smoker. They're taking away from the light of God through their adherence to this substance abuse. And these are universal truths amongst many religions. And people might say, well, the Bible doesn't talk about cigarettes. I'm not saying the Bible is the word of God. What I'm saying is you have to look at these universal truths. Substance abuse is universally shunned by all major religions. And I'm not talking about savage, dirt-dwelling religions. I'm talking about the higher religions, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, Baha'i. These things, they are not pro substance abuse. I believe Ellen G. White. I'm not really Ellen G. White. I believe, and I'm still waiting on the goddamn book. I don't know where the hell the frickin' thing is. I ordered John Harvey Kellogg's book on biologic living. Now, I believe that Pierre Teilhard de Chardin and John Harvey Kellogg and Ellen G. White, I believe their unique systems of Christianity are the apex of Christianity before you get outside of Christianity. I agree with Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche had stated that there should be a form of Christianity similar to Buddhism, free of supernaturalism, but that promoted domestication of the masses. Because you have to remember, the masses are ignorant and stupid. That's just the case. And that's where Christianity, see, philosophy is for those of us that can think. Okay, those of us that can think embrace philosophy. I also consider myself an objectivist. Ayn Rand is my favorite philosopher. I think she breaks with a lot of her own things. I don't agree with her in all points because I am an objectivist. I think that she lacks objectivity in many ways. I do too, but I try to keep my mind as in sync with objective reality as possible. And Ayn Rand did have some very unobjective views. So philosophy, such as objectivism, or the Socratic philosophies, or Nietzscheism, or what have you, that's for those of us that can think. Religion, as Ayn Rand stated, is canned philosophy. Okay, what does that mean? Religion is a set of dictates that are predetermined. Now, I do believe in universal truths. I believe they matter. But religion takes that a step further and says this fits this, fits this, fits this, fits this. This situation is always answered with this. There's no room for thought, no room for personal deviancy. Or deviation, I should say, not deviancy. No room for personal deviation from what the religion says. Philosophy is something else. I would not consider myself a Western philosopher or some nonsense like that, but I would say that ultimately I like to keep a little bit of room for deviation. I like to be able to change my mind when new facts present themselves. I wouldn't say that I'm exactly I'm not a moral relativist, because like I said, there are universal truths which are objectively quantified, categorized, and observably true. If you do these things, bad things will happen to you. Okay? Or at the very least, you are at an increased risk of bad things happening to you. If you're an alcoholic, you are taking away from the light of God a little bit. You are taken away and you are at a higher risk of developing certain diseases. If you live a godly life by adhering to the laws of health, you are less likely to develop these issues. And then people will say, well, you have stated that you have health issues. I do have health issues. These health issues were caused predominantly by not adhering to the laws of health. Okay, and I probably am still not adhering to the laws of health, and I must adjust my life to fit that. And that's all for this video. I will leave links to everything I talked about in the video, in the description. Please follow the links, check the links out. That's a little bit about me. No, I don't really know if I'm a transhumanist. Like I said, from the legitimate original definition of transhumanism, I am a person that believes in implementing technology to transcend human frailty. That is my belief. That I believe that humanity needs to direct its own evolution forward. It needs to take the initiative and direct its evolution through the implementation of technology, be that technology gene therapies, cybernetics, prosthetics, uploading our minds onto the internet, colonization of space, colonization of the oceans. It's all good.